Welcome to Third Floor Views, a production of Chesapeake Family Life, where we talk about health, education, and living with kids. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. This episode is sponsored by Annapolis Pediatrics. For more than 70 years, Annapolis Pediatrics has provided exceptional health care to infants, children, adolescents, and young adults in Annapolis and the surrounding areas. They have over 30 physicians and nurse practitioners to serve your family, and now in 6 locations: Annapolis, Crofton, Edgewater, Severna Park, Kent Island, and Pasadena. Learn more about Annapolis Pediatrics and find helpful parenting resources, videos, and more at AnnapolisPediatrics.com. So today we're talking about LGBTQIA plus youth resources and welcoming spaces. And joining us is owner of Main Street Pearl in Tacoma Park and co-founder of Pearl Purpose, Leandra Nichola. Thank you so much, Leandra, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
To our viewers, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put those in the comment section and we'll get to those as we can. Okay, let's just jump in. I first want to talk about what is Pearl Purpose as a concept and in practice.
Sure. So, Pearl Purpose is actually a sibling nonprofit that was born out of the work that was happening in our little bubbly cafe here in Tacoma Park, which started out as just intending to be an inclusive space for young people to come and spend time. And then very quickly, it was clear that the queer and questioning youth in our community were really desperate for a space to call their own. And so we did a little tweaking around the edges, and now we have this beautiful space. But it was also clear that the services and support that were needed were more than what could be handled by a cafe. So the nonprofit was born, and Pearl Purpose's mission is really to literally make space for queer and questioning youth, their families and allies, especially on Main Street. But it's really about space making, both physically and building the infrastructure for youth to have a presence out in the community as well.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about originally having this sort of lovely inclusive cafe, but then realizing that there were some other things going on. What were you seeing that made you realize that Pearl Purpose would be a really useful thing in the community?
It was very, very organic. It was young people just showing up and saying I don't know what I would do without this space. Being here has helped me become brave enough to come out to my parents. You were the first place that knew about my pronouns or whatever it is. And it was just oh, okay. Literally we just opened the doors, put up some pride flags and sold some pins. The young people just were so ripe for it. They were ready for finding a place like that. And then came together and were this is our home. So they sent the message to me. I didn't come up with the idea, really.
I mean, what a beautiful story about being, so organic and truly meeting the community's needs. I'm wondering though, what is it about Main Street Pearl? What is it about your cafe that created this? You said you said you put up flags and you were selling some pride pins, but clearly there are some other pieces in place. Whether it be, I think, decor definitely is sending clear signals, but what else makes your cafe such a welcoming space to people who are questioning their identity?
It helps that we're a very rainbow family behind the bar, and being a very openly queer family definitely helps. And then I think the design of Main Street Pearl was always with young people at the center. So often young people are kind of an afterthought, if they are thought of at all when it comes to retail or hospitality spaces. And they were really designed with a center from the start. So it's colorful and it's bright, and it's you have kids making signs all over the store and things like that. They're just oh, this place is for me. And that's just for every young person. But then it was for those queer young people, it was oh no, the space is actually really for me. And it was yeah, it is. Turns out it is.
When you say young people, what are you really imagining, or what does the range cover when you say young people?
It is. So mostly these are people who are able to get here independently. So our youngest, like kind of regular participants are the third graders. And that's like, it's a big deal, but they come in groups and it's very sweet. Like, and because we are in walking distance of our elementary school and middle school, they can come right after school and hang out for a couple hours. And then parents will often pick up here. So, but there is like, they need to be kind of old enough to navigate getting here on their own. And then that like sweet age is that like 8 to 14 is really our zone. We have folks a little bit younger and a little bit older too, and they have kind of different roles, you know, but.
What is the community like in the space, you know, whether that be Pearl Purpose or Main Street Pearl? What does it feel like when the kids are there? What are they doing and how are they interacting with each other?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of play. So we have a great like games library. So kids are always grabbing games and being like, I don't know who you are. Do you want to play this game? We need another person. So, you know, it's very welcoming in that way. And then, you know, there's that piece. And then there's also the like productive piece. They're wanting to make signs, they're wanting to make buttons, they're wanting to, and they have access to like all the supplies to do that. So they're just like, oh, I feel like doing this, that I can either take it home or I can leave it here for someone to pick up for free, or like, oh, maybe this should be the start of something that we sell here. So there's a lot of like kind of open opportunity there. And then there's always a couple grownups hanging out, like either sitting at the bar or sitting on the patio or whatever, who are often parents or allies who are just around.
What does Pearl Purpose look like in terms of programming? So it sounds like there's a lot of really organic things happening at the cafe. In terms of what Pearl Purpose is bringing as an organization, what are you guys putting together for queer youth?
Yeah, so it started out with Q Kids, which is our like twice a month hangout session, and it has like very little bit of structure, but it's mostly kids just wanting to hang out together, and that is amazing. But then we started adding these kind of outreach opportunities for young people. So we have our Everyday Pride Project, which is, it's pretty much ends up being about once a month. There's some kind of LGBTQ day of significance that we celebrate. So whether it's, you know, like Freedom to Marry Day or Trans Day of Visibility or whatever it is. And the young people like set up a table outside and they give out appropriate things, whether it's like trans flags, or we did, you know, the little rainbow ribbons for National Day of Freedom to Marry Day. And then they talk to folks, like they're just like, people are like, I don't know what you're up to. Why are you giving me this thing? And they'll just talk to them in a very simple way. And it's a very powerful way to educate, having young people behind the table. Because grownups will ask questions that they would never ask another grown-up. Because they think that they're like giving kids an opportunity to kind of show off their skills, but you know, they're able to sort of like hide behind their lack of knowledge. So it's a really powerful way to build like really a deep knowledge in the community about what LGBTQ youth are going through and what is important to them. So there's that. The other kind of key outreach project that they work on is the Pronouns Matter project. And so they work really hard on making these pronoun buttons and get those out and talk about the importance of pronouns. And then we have two other like more substantial projects that we're working on. And the one is, it's a gender affirming gear program. So we're partnering with GC2B. They provide binders to folks. They have a foundation wing. And so they're going to be training us so that we can make sure folks get fitted and are able to give out free binders as folks need them in a confidential way. So it's a really awesome resource for young people who are going through puberty and are feeling like that is the kind of thing that would help with gender dysphoria or whatever that they're going through. And then the other thing we're trying to build out is a queer youth internship program. So I'm super excited about it because it means I get to go into businesses and do some educating on that side and say, let's look at your employment policies and let's talk about how you can become like a queer inclusive business. And then once we feel that those are safe places for young people to work and be, then we know they can, the ideas for, young people 14 and up can earn some internship hours there. So it's pretty exciting.
That's really exciting. And that's a lot. That's a lot going on. I do want to pause and backtrack just for a moment. And
Sure.
there are a few things that you said that I want to pause and sort of do a mini education piece on.
Sure.
So could you just talk about the Pronoun Project and what it is and why pronouns are important?
Sure. So the Pronoun Project is very simply just to emphasize the fact that being called by the pronouns that somebody identifies with is a very powerful, it's a very powerful part of communication, and it has the ability to be affirming and welcoming, or the ability to be like very, very painful for people. So it's a very simple thing that we can do, and pronoun buttons are an awesome way to do it, because so much about what we know and think about gender is visual. And as much as we're all trying to like undo that socialization that we've had, it can be very challenging. So having a pin is a great like visual reminder. If what your brain is saying is somebody's assumed gender, it can remind you that like, oh no, that person told me that isn't the way, that those are not the pronouns that they want to use. And it's a great like visual reminder of it. And for everybody to just wear them all the time is great, because avoiding making assumptions generally is the way to go in life. So
Definitely. And then the other thing I'd love to just chat really briefly about is binders. What are binders? How are they being used? Why are they important? And, you briefly touched on it in terms of going through puberty, and that could be really, really challenging if you're someone who's questioning your identity, and then you're in this physical flux of change as well. The role that binders can play in being helpful.
Yeah. So they're chest binders, and people have been binding forever. But there is actual equipment to do it safely, because doing it on your own with all the various things that people come up with to bind can be really damaging to your bone structure, especially as you're growing, and to breast tissue. So, which can, even if ultimately you end up deciding that having top surgery is the way to go, it can make that more complicated for you. So there's lots of reasons why you want to make sure that you're taking good care of your body. And but they're not inexpensive tools that folks can and not everyone can get their hands on them. So making sure that they're available in an accessible way is important. And then also it's so tricky, because many young people are not out in their families, or their families aren't supportive, and to spend $50 or $100 on a chest binder would be a really challenging thing to do. So being able to do that in a safe space is important. But so chest binders are many folks want to use them when breasts are developing, or you have breasts, and that doesn't feel like it fits with your gender identity. And that could be for non-binary folks, that could be for trans folks, but yeah. And it could even, there's people who identify, as female, and also just it doesn't feel good to have breasts. So it's very, very flattening.
And then these are, some of them are being made specifically for kids, younger people. So it's, as you talked about, it's safe as they're growing as well.
Yeah, but that's why sizing is really important, because
Gotcha. Perfect.
Making sure that you have the right size, especially as you're growing, you need to be checking in on that frequently.
Right. So it sounds like it makes a lot of sense to also have a mentor, someone that who can help you through this process and make sure that you're making good choices. So it's, oh my gosh, all the connections into the community sound amazing. Like you're talking to businesses and you have kids talking to people on the street, which sounds so brave and hopefully so empowering for
Yeah.
youth. What has the community reaction been?
Oh, I mean, we're very lucky to be in Tacoma Park because it is a very welcoming and supportive community. But I can't tell you how, I mean, I barely am out there when the children are out there, like they're doing their thing, and I try not to get in the way too much. But when I do sneak out there, there are just so many grownups being like, I'm just so impressed with what you're doing. How do you know all these things? And it's just, yeah, people are just very, very impressed with our young people. And so few people, they never, like, I never hear of negative interactions. They're like, sometimes people like ignore us and don't want to take a sticker, but they never have a negative interaction. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. And then your kids, your actual children that you are a parent to, they're really involved, right? They're involved in both the cafe, but then also Pearl Purpose. Is that right? What do they do? What is their role?
Yeah, I mean, Main Street Pearl was really like born out of the fact that I wanted them to have a place to be and hang out with their friends. And they didn't feel like there was one. So that was a big motivating factor for building this place to begin with. But they each have kind of different roles. Ocean was very heavily involved in running the tuck shop initially, which is like the youth run like business part where you can buy snacks and little crafty things. And now they run what's right behind me, the queer gear shop, where you can buy your flags and pins and all that. And they pretty much are always working behind the bar with me. So they work the register and I make the drinks. It's kind of our system. And Amaranth, who's a little bit younger, he is kind of all over the place. He's our little social butterfly. So he goes and like, he makes the connections with people and he's like, hey, don't you want to try this game? And, he kind of does that kind of outreach on the ground. And then of course comes out to the events, and he's the extrovert of the three of us. So, so we rely on him for that.
That's awesome. I also see clearly there's a role for everyone. And you talk about it being such a welcoming space. And I see that it's welcoming on so many different levels. No matter what your personality is, there can be a space for you. Which with kids, I think particularly with middle school kids, where they're like, middle school can be rough. Finding a place that's really, it feels like your true home where you can really be yourself and not be judged for it is such a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I definitely see that in the different ways that people are in the space. We have those young people who are sitting at the table doing their homework or doodling on their own, and then we have the ones who are playing games. And it definitely, that's absolutely true. Can find their way no matter what.
Have you found anything else like Pearl Purpose in the area and the area, I mean, we could even go to like, DC, outer areas of Maryland, even towards Baltimore. What resources have you stumbled upon that are supporting queer kids like you guys are?
Yeah, so Smile has been a really big and important organization in our family's life. So they run out of DC, and we got involved with them in COVID, and they were doing virtual programming. They're one of the only organizations that has programming specifically for youth under the age of 12. There is a lot of great stuff for teenagers, but very, very few things for young people under the age of 12 or 12 and under. So, but they are, they're really fabulous. I can't say enough good things about them. So they have that like kind of a twice a month meetup. My kid is now part of the middle school book club, which is really fun. And then they have programming for younger kids too. So that's a wonderful resource. And then there's, Trevor's Project is fabulous for older youth, and their helplines and the text chats and that kind of stuff are like really, really awesome resources for young people if they have questions or just feel like they need to talk to somebody. Because, of course, mental health stuff is a very big deal in this community. And that's where I send folks. I say, yeah, maybe this is this number. Here, go.
Mm-hmm.
um, so those are the two big ones that I can think of.
That's helpful.
I know that like Montgomery County is also got some things kind of going, and there's like a Montgomery County Youth Pride organization. It doesn't sound like they're super active yet, but I think it's coming.
Okay. So things to keep a lookout
Yeah.
for. As a parent, how, talking to other parents, how would you recommend they create spaces that are warm and welcoming and safe and supportive for their queer youth or queer questioning youth that are maybe having a hard time, or maybe not, maybe they're actually like, things are going great, but to be a resource for the community? What would you recommend that parents do, or what kind of space could parents set up that could support some queer youth?
Yeah, I think the visual clues are really important, more than I would have had expected. So get to know your various pride flags, and have that kind of stuff around. It really does send a message of like, oh, you know things, and this is a place where I could think about that stuff. And there's so many resources online for just kind of learning about. It's a whole new language. It's very different than when I grew up, So try to get educated and just have like some visual clues. And there are things that like you can do beyond that are like making sure in every chance you have to be using your, like, noting your pronouns places. I mean, young people pick up on all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are your hopes and dreams for Pearl Purpose?
I mean, I think my not so secret hope is just that the young people steal it, like they just take it over. they just figure out what they need. And as this kind of first little group of cohort of Q youth get older, then get into like the end of high school, that they want to just be like, oh, we already have like teen facilitators, and I just want them to run the place. So that's my dream. Because it should really be for Q youth by Q youth.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's where the power lies? Because I would imagine the fact that Main Street Pearl is run by, as you said, a queer family, and that you're really supportive. So there are already some really fantastic adults that are role modeling. Like, what role do you play in creating that safe space? And where do adults, what is the role of adults, and how can that be used most powerfully in the experience? And like, how much should you be stepping in versus, what, this is youth empowerment, and I'm going to step back and let you guys shine.
Yeah, it is really about, you just kind of like create the opportunity and step away is I think the best way to make it happen. Because they really do know what they need, and they'll come to me and be like, oh, we need this thing, or we have this idea, and I'll be like, great, let's make it happen. What do you need to do it? And just kind of letting them be. But that said, like, having a watchful eye and noticing like as things are shifting is really important. And I know that there's parents are very grateful to be able to drop their kids off, but they're also really grateful to come and meet the other parents outside and chit chat for a couple minutes and talk about like, oh my goodness, like, what do you have, like a gender care doctor, and like, where are you? Like, so be able to connect on like very practical ways is also really useful. But it's about like giving them space, and then like making space for trying to take care of your own business around this stuff too.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like there's really layers of communities that has then formed around this, that there's the parent community, and then even the youth community. It's like some of the younger kids, and then the roles of the older kids, and yet it's all connected, and everyone's sort of learning and growing together.
Yeah,
It sounds really beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. I think so too.
How can people support your work if people are listening today and are really excited or want to get involved in some way? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, so we are just launching this nonprofit. So we have a launch campaign that you can contribute to online, and any little bit makes a big difference. We're like totally bootstrapping it and are just very it's just a lot of elbow grease that's making this happen. So and then like reach out and plan an event, we're so totally open. If there's something that like works for your family and you want to dig in and do some work to make it happen, like I am so happy to facilitate.
That's really helpful to know. And I think there's often so many cases where people are excited about something, but maybe don't know how to get it started or looking for partners, and knowing that your organization is, there with, again, welcoming with wide open arms.
Totally.
So that's really helpful. Well, thank you so much, Leandra Nichols, for joining me today, and to Pearl Purpose. And thank you also to all of our viewers and listeners and our sponsor, Annapolis Pediatrics. Make sure that you visit ChesapeakeFamily.com for up-to-date local information on home, health, and living for today's Maryland parent. This episode will be archived on ChesapeakeFamily.com in video and podcast format. And then we'll also post some of Leandra's recommendations for resources and her website as well. So make sure you check that out. I'm Janet Jefferson with Chesapeake Family Life and Third Floor Views. Thank you so much.